Kia ora koutou, ko Vicki Smith aho, ko kai toi aho. Hello, I'm an artist. I'm originally from Harihari, which is on the west coast of the South Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's a small remote community of 300 people. And so in my growing up, I was immersed in nature, in old growth forest, and in landscapes that were mountains and rivers and the sea. So thank you very much to Dr. Maggie Buxton, to Awhi World for inviting us here to do this presentation. And I'm going to just read a quick intro of me with my artist hat on. I also work within community engagement around the environment as a freshwater champion, encouraging people to think about how actions around waterways can be beneficial to the creatures in the water, around the water, and ourselves as in parts of the environment. So, as I said, my name is Vicki Smith. I'm a visual, virtual, and collaborative artist, and I use different methods to engage communities of practice around understanding and building solutions to local, global environmental issues. I like to focus through place and narrative, and I seek to create participatory projects that encourage an understanding of the ecological pressures that we're facing and lead forward into positive action. I'm also current chair of the ADA network, and this presentation is about Aotearoa Digital Arts Network. So the formation of the ADA list might be seen as a rhizomic network, a generative repository for gathering artworks and critical discussions in the myriad of directions that digital media and artworks interface the digital over the last 2 decades. And you'll see here a few of the logos and iterations or growth stages, we could say, that ADA has gone through since its formation in 2003. This is a screen grab of the front of the ADA website, and Karen McCaw described it in the Digital Arts Media Reader as bringing people together who are separated by distance and time zones. Participants in the ADA network are a self-selected community. They're imaginatively connected, and primarily through an identification with Aotearoa New Zealand as one of their sites of belonging. So there's a multiplicity of writing and works that fall within the amorphous bounds of digital or new media art. The connective tissue, maybe the mycorrhizal, or the common unity, is of exploring the technical edgelands between multiple codes. The network is the provision of welcome where participants, such as the original Ada Lovelace, may have found a place to create new strands within the broad definition of digital art. On the edge of the media reader that you've just seen in the last screen is a number of colours, and it's part of an artwork by Raewyn Turner, which was called The Perfumes of Fear. In her work, she gathered information from the colour of the lush, enchanted, and contaminated landscape of New Plymouth, New Zealand. It was translated and transformed into a fragrance. Raewyn Turner's concept of fragrance from the green palette is an investigation into the potential smell as a cross-disciplinary and cross-sensory indication of information about people, their emotional and physical states, and their local environment. So the colours green are 400 colours collected from Mount Taranaki and the 245T contaminated site around Paritutu. Within the reader, and what can be found on the ADA ada.net.nz are a number of writings and artworks, and this one is entitled "The Graph is Landscape." It's an article by Julia Oliver, and within it, Oliver discusses the development and reception of the packet garden, which was he likened to a walk-in graph, using the metaphor of terrain. Through the packet garden, users can generate a garden each day that becomes a personalization of the unseen life of the network. And he suggested it produced interesting and unexpected user behaviours and reactions to the project. And leaping forward a little bit, but again taking the gardening metaphor, and it being rendered slightly more physical while remaining firmly connected to gaming and network systems, is the work by Birgit Buschler called Talk to the Plant. She connected a plant, water, and light system to a laptop running Farmville, which was a game on Facebook. And participants in the network were invited to view the data temperature, light, and moisture in order to nurture the plant. In an interview of the collective exhibition Copy Wildly, Buschler observed the online gardening tool. I thought it would be interesting to connect games like Farmville to real farms, so one's work consists of a laptop connected to a plant. It's called Talk to the Plant, and the idea is that maybe one day people who waste time in these virtual worlds could actually do it for a good reason, if they could water and look after a plant from their computer. And coming forward slightly, in 2015, the Ada Network organised what was called the Transitional Imaginary, which was a book sprint. And it came from the growing archive of work within the Ada research theme, Mesh Cities, Space, Network and Memory, which happened in reflection and response to the earthquake-struck Aotearoa Christchurch. Over the 5 days, 8 artists and writers foraged the rewilding spaces of Christchurch to produce the first scholarly imprint for the local free-range press. A transitional imaginary was created in digital form through book type. The book sprint offered multiple views of the transitional from its physical and thematic base in central Christchurch, and within its multiple views, the intertwined nature of networks, human and the more than human, are explored. Helen Moore experienced ground zero in the earthquakes, and her shared journey of walking, journaling and observing plants, both native and exotic, and how they proliferate. We understand plants can be imagined in terms of networks through which they proliferate. We think of weeds as invasive species that arrive autonomously, crossing borders to inhabit any available ecological niche, and in this instance paying little attention to the constraints of movement around the city, and that was to do with the fences of the red zone. Seeds lodge themselves in the cracks, germinating with exposure to the newly available light in a magical reversed darkroom chemistry. Disturbances to habitat can determine which kind of weeds can network in that place. Weeds then operate as a complex counter-network too, and within the networks that underwrite the garden city. In the section about networks within the transitional imaginary, through a lyrical discussion about entropy and forests, Julian Priest uses the metaphor of the light well to reflect on the demise of the mature systems and the germination of the latent new one, calling it a space of possibility for smaller voices that had lain dormant in the seed bank, waiting for the ordered energy of the sun to penetrate from the overarching canopy and activate the genetic information of the seed. What was transformed from the shifting gradients of entropy, Earth, as a system that constantly takes in and transforms energy and information. This brings us forward again into the Ada art base and some of the writing that's there. And this is a screen grab from um, the article that was commissioned by Tim Corbalis called The Digital Anesthetics. And it explores the theme of our connection and disconnection through data as observed by the machine. It includes in its survey reference to the terrestrial assemblages, one of which is the work by Simon Ingram with John Paul Pochin, where a computer visualizes the subterranean microbial activity that serves as a function of healthy soils and the basis of the life of plants. Corbalis writes of the work providing the aesthetics and anesthetics of the machine itself. It is revealed, but its workings still obscure. In these works, there is perhaps the anesthetics of care on display, a way to experiment with nature that, as with larger planetary models, leaves nature itself alone. And coming forward again into the next research theme of Ada, which was indeterminate infrastructures, objects, signals, and architectures. And this included artworks, articles such as we've just seen, and symposia over a 2-year period. Finn Petrie first observes the shared existence between biologies and digital technologies, and within the second, he constructs a series of 3D printed structures in clay, which are perched in trees and given autonomy in how lichen growth might encounter them. A further part to his work was augmented through the digital in a gallery situation where the works play to the plant time and offer microscopic images of lichen spores. Petrie referred to these works as cognitive assemblages, where the cognition of plants, himself, and the technologies are all at play to produce the works. Finn's second work was within a symposium that was hosted in Whakatū Nelson. And here we see the work of Dr. Rewa Wright. We were invited through her multiple works to understand the Indigenous view of the inseparable nature of beings. Dr. Wright contributed a projection of collaboration with plants, technology, and other humans. Her exploration of a tendency towards privileging the animal over plant biologies, and with her keynote immersed us in multiple intelligences, the more than human interactions used in the creation, dissemination, and discussion of digital media arts in its myriad of forms. Through tracing the connections between quanta, nanoparticles, modi, and wairua, her talk reflected upon the threads within media art, physics, medicine, data, and post-human design, and wove a new path forward between Western and Indigenous science, philosophy, and cosmology. And also in our Ada Symposium in 2022, we were presented with other branches of innovation through the sharing of the presentation of Awhi World and the works of Dr. Maggie Buxton and Kim Newell, which has flowered into the incubator and symposium that we are blessed to share today. And finally, I just invite you to plant the seed by joining the Ada list and hopefully follow our social media, which might germinate into the newest node of the rhizomic nature of the Ada network, and having its flowering as the Ada Symposium in Wellington in May 2024. This is, of course, funding pending. Thank you.